In this video, I'll be ranking all Project Zomboid occupations for Extinction. This is way different from the Apocalypse tier list I've posted a few weeks ago, as added sprinters, terrible starts and low loot really affect the gameplay. Before we start, I've been told by the YouTube overlords that only 4% of you beautiful people are subscribed, so please like and subscribe so we can reach 300 subs by the end of the month and inverse the sub ratio. Right, let's jump right into it. We'll be using the standard S-A-B-C-D-F tier list, and we shall start with Unemployed, which gets us C tier. Whilst still viable, it doesn't provide you with any good bonuses, and the higher the difficulty, the more extreme those things get. Look, 8 points on Apocalypse is a possible trade-off for not getting any skill bonuses, but on Extinction, you might need that sort of a boost. Next, Fire Officer. This beautiful profession starts you with 0 starting points and gives you +1 in fitness, running, strength and axe. Immediate S tier. On Apocalypse, this is a great starting build for quality of life. On Extinction, it's a huge boost, partially because of the running bonus. Normally, it's a pretty horrible skill, due to cars being very easy to acquire and running being unnecessary with all zomboids being shamblers. On Extinction, chances are you'll have to raise zombies upon spawning into the game, which completely changes the dynamic of the game. Having quadruple XP for a skill that will genuinely help you survive is huge, and that's on top of higher fitness and strength. Notably, you also get a level in Axe, which is incredible for all of you Rosewood Fire Department fans out there. While I think that axes aren't as great of a pick at this difficulty, you cannot deny the powerfulness of having an XP boost for a combat skill. Then we have Police Officer, which is a bit of a difficult one to rate. On one hand, +4 aiming and +1 nimble is incredible. On the other hand, you're starting at -4 points with nothing to help you survive the initial hell on earth. If you're a pro gamer, you might not need any help early on and value late game gun skills a lot more, but for most people, this gets D tier, even with that nimble level. You have to remember that with sprinters, high population, high zombie HP and crazy good hearing, the guns are just not viable without a giant ammo supply, at which point you should probably cheese the incoming horde with pipe bombs or molotovs. Next is Park Ranger, which unfortunately just isn't very good. If you want to survive Extinction by playing Wilderness, you are better off with Bushcrafter trait and another occupation. Not only is Park Ranger not providing you with any benefits early on, it's also off meta in the long run. I'd give it a D tier for this difficulty. Now, Construction Worker is definitely better in Extinction than in Apocalypse. Here, with scarce loot and big combat focus, having a bonus in 2 different melee weapons and in maintenance is low-key incredible utility. You also get a level in Carpentry, which can come in handy. Masonry doesn't really do much unless you're going very long term and plan on building a proper stone mansion. Overall, this is an A tier, for the bonuses that you get at -2 starting points are really solid. Then we have Security Guard, which suddenly becomes a strong option on this difficulty. +2 running will let you get very fast very quickly, and +1 in short blunt is fairly strong as well. Notably, the profession also gives you +1 light-footed. If you've played Extinction before, you know how easy it is to level up sneaking skills. With this occupation, you'll reach surprisingly high light-footed levels in just a couple of days, given you're not playing Countryside with no zombies around. Overall, this is B tier, really helping with the early gameplay and letting you max out some useful skills way earlier than usual. If you're wondering about the usefulness of Night Owl, basically there is none. You likely won't notice this trait, that's how whatever it is. It can save you some small amounts of time sleeping in theory, but after the meta events it doesn't even matter. Carpenter gives you a level in short blunt and maintenance, which is good for combat, and then carpentry and carving are also quite useful. I think that for -2 starting points, this is still a very solid pick, and just like in Apocalypse, remains an A tier pick. Now, Burglar. The +2 points in light-footed and sneaking let you go absolutely crazy with stealth, which is quite useful for this difficulty. and +2 nimble is sensational. Additionally, the Burglar perk, which is usually pretty mediocre, suddenly becomes extremely useful. Not always can you find car keys, and it is very important to note that usable cars are very rare on Extinction settings, so Burglar makes it a fair bit easier to get one early on. That puts this occupation in S tier, even with the high starting cost of -6. It does require a specific playstyle, and for some it could be hard because you'll need to pick up some negative traits to counteract the low starting points. Still, it's worth it. Then we have Chef, which at -2 points doesn't really give you much early game utility. Butchering and cooking will not be useful for a long time after all. However, the class does give you +1 maintenance and short blade, and with zombies having way higher health, the insta-killing of short blade suddenly becomes way higher value than on Apocalypse, where Firefighter axes and baseball bats solo zombies by just having high enough damage. I think this can be considered C tier, a viable pick for experienced players. It does give you the Keen Cook perk, which is nice for long term I guess, but it doesn't give any value early on, so it doesn't affect the rating much. Next is DIY Expert, which claims its place next to the Construction Worker, being fairly similar in most things that matter. It sacrifices the long blunt bonus for inventive trait and swaps some points around, but it's still mostly similar. A tier. Now, Rancher is not very good for Extinction. The amount of hassle you'll go through to get animals and make use of this occupation is often just too much to justify, especially with how powerful fishing is at the moment. At least you get +1 fitness and the occupation starts you at 0 points, so it isn't totally useless. Still, on average it's D tier. Then we get its worst version, Farmer. There is no logical reason to ever take this occupation. Agriculture is totally off meta. If you want animal care you should take Rancher, and +1 strength is not worth starting with 0 points, considering you could just take Unemployed with Stout and start with +2 strength and +2 starting points. Our first F tier. Coming up, we have Fishing Guide, which takes a big hit in Extinction. Normally it's a great choice, but on Extinction getting -2 starting points and no combat or utility skills is really bad. +3 fishing and +1 foraging gives insane value, but you get nothing to help you survive zombies. Overall it sits at C tier. Great for getting food, but you need water axes and multiple negative traits to get the necessary perks to make this a good pick. Then we have Doctor, which unironically gets better on Extinction compared to Apocalypse. With limited time to get the necessary loot before the helicopter and water and electricity shut off, 700% fracture healing speed and mobility buffs from level 6 first aid can occasionally come in clutch. More importantly though, the +1 short blade is actually not bad here, so at 0 points cost, this occupation still sucks, but it's not useless. I'd put it in D tier. Veteran. While I think this occupation is overrated on Apocalypse, I think it's straight up horrible on Extinction. You basically start with -8 points, so 16 less than Unemployed, and what you get in return is immunity to panic. Which sucks, because now you can't pick up any negative or positive traits related to panic, and you will need a lot of negative traits to pay the costs of the occupation. Aiming and reloading isn't going to help you for the first couple of weeks, so this occupation lands straight in F tier. If you want to avoid panic, just pick literally any other occupation and take the Brave trait. Nurse gives you fitness and light-footed, which is great, and +3 first aid, which, well, isn't. At 0 points, this at least gives you utility, so I guess it can get a low C tier. The Night Owl perk doesn't really do anything, so you can just forget about it. Lumberjack is pretty situational on those settings. If you can't get your hands on a good combat axe, then this is a bit of a dead profession, just giving +1 maintenance and strength, as well as a bit of movement speed when going through trees. However, if you spawn in Rosewood and get your hands on some Firefighter axes, this profession immediately jumps to S tier with the Expert and +2 axe while starting at 0 points. On average though, you won't have a perfect start, the fire department might be empty, or maybe you just don't start in Rosewood. Due to all of those curveballs, this occupation is overall just B tier. Again, S tier if you get a perfect start. Fitness Instructor is pretty much just a better Unemployed for the purposes of Extinction. Starting at +3 fitness and +1 strength is great, and starting with -6 points is basically the equivalent of playing Stout plus Fit with better fitness to strength ratio and +2 running at -2 points. Unfortunately, it can't really be considered A tier. Why? Because Athletic exists, and if you want to have high fitness, you'd probably pick that with other occupation over the Fitness Instructor. It's still a solid pick with incredible early game utility, so B tier it is. The nutritionist perk it gives is pointless, so just ignore it. Burger Flipper is just a better chef, as it costs 4 less trade points while keeping both maintenance and short build bonuses. That alone would throw it into A tier because of how much value you get at +2 starting points and leveling bonuses for combat skills. But then it also keeps +2 cooking and the Keen Cook perk, which is a bit of value long term. Overall, a really solid choice, and so A tier it is. Electrician is an automatic F tier, no real explanation needed. Starting with -2 points just for +5 in a dead skill doesn't really make sense, does it? Meanwhile, Engineer proves supreme once again. Yes, -4 starting points is a huge cost to pay, and +1 Carpentry, Masonry and Electrical isn't exactly great. In fact, if that was it, the occupation would land in F tier without any further discussion. The ability to make pipe bombs is too valuable though. I'd put this in A tier, being extremely strong and one of the only ways to clear hordes on Extinction. The reason it can't be S tier is that you're paying too much for a single benefit. In 95% of cases, you won't even notice your bonuses. Despite that, the remaining 5% will carry your run. Extremely difficult playstyle for players just starting Extinction. Welder. Now I think some of you might disagree with this take, but I think it's not worth the points. Don't get me wrong, welding is, at least in theory, quite incredible. Lets you make your own armor and weapons and barricades. Yeah, but this is Extinction. You're paying 12 points for literally just welding. You'll have to spend a lot of time and resources for this investment to pay off. The occupation is also not very viable for beginners because it offers 0 early game utility. C tier. It's playable, but definitely not recommended. Though I guess some people take it just because it's the only viable profession if you actually want to do welding in this game. Blacksmith. It's probably A tier, even though it's extremely late game oriented. It's expensive, yes, but what makes it so good is that you start with +1 maintenance and short blunt, meaning even at the very beginning you get strong combat leveling bonuses, at which point the occupation looks a lot more affordable. The only downside is that high-level melee weaponry isn't as overpowered in Extinction as it would be in Apocalypse, making pipe bombs a superior option. Second to last is mechanic, and this is a bit of a hard one. On one hand, repairing vehicles is great value considering that they are really rare and you probably need them to get around. On the other hand, you're starting with -4 points and all you get in return is mechanics and +1 welding. So until you acquire a car, you're basically playing Unemployed with -12 points. And even after that, it might be that you don't really need that big of an investment, considering vehicle knowledge is a standalone trait. I don't really think this is a good profession, especially for beginners. D tier it is. Finally, last but not least, Tailor, giving you +4 tailoring for +2 starting points. Hot take, I think that's mediocre. On Apocalypse, yeah, you can get away with that, invest into tailoring and go crazy. On Extinction you need to worry way more about survival and tailoring will take some time to become useful. Overall it's about D tier. You mostly want mobility from your character, not armor, because getting hit already means you made a mistake. Tailoring is basically thick-skinned, but working. So just don't get hit and you don't need tailoring. With no early game utility, this is still pretty bad for beginners. So you need to be at least a bit experienced to make this work, at which point you don't need tailoring, at which point why are you even taking this occupation? Okay, this is the final product. Let me know what you think in the comments. Remember to subscribe to meet the 300 subs goal. See you in the next one. Have a great day.